All right, we are recording.
All right, so we're calling the meeting to order. See that it's been duly noticed. We got Nancy, Vice Chair here. We got Treasurer Marlon here, Mr. Ramos. Chris,
Secretary.
Secretary or something now? Is that like?
Chrissy is secretary. Yes.
Yeah.
So she's here. And Mike is here, board member, executive director, Cher, and our counsel, Bob. Welcome. So with that, I will take a motion to go into executive session.
I move that we go into executive session.
We got Nancy on that. Marlon, you second?
I second.
All right.
Okay,
All
so
in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Motion carried.
I so move to come
All right.
out of executive
Second.
session.
Second by Mike. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carried. So, okay, we'll do the resolution.
You want to, we have to summarize what happened in executive session?
Well, okay, so in executive session, we discussed resolution 2020-07-27-01 and its content, which I will read now. Is authorizing the agency to execute the contract for the sale of 5 Scobie Drive parcel. I'm not going to go through all the whereases and things like that, but we found the contract in its form existing now is sufficient. So we will go ahead with the resolution. I guess, Cher, you want to call the roll?
sure. So we have Austin DuBois,
Aye.
Chrissy Amato,
Aye.
Marlon Ramos,
Aye.
Nancy Thomas,
Aye.
Mike Kelly.
Aye.
All right.
I'm sorry. Was there a motion for the resolution?
That fair point. Let's do that again. I'll take a motion to approve the resolution.
I make the motion.
All right, motion by Marlon,
I'll second.
second by Mike. I can assume nobody's vote has changed. Speak now.
No.
All right. Motion carried, resolution approved. Thank you all. I think we did a good thing here. I think we did some good work, and I'm excited. I don't know if anybody got a chance to review the deck that was shared, but for some reason they presented it to the Economic Development Committee, and I don't know why they didn't present it to us, but that's obviously why I wanted us to.
A PowerPoint?
Yeah, the PowerPoint. That's the type of stuff they're looking to do there, which if they can get that there, then we've really, I think, done a great thing.
Right.
Did everybody get it?
It should have been shared with everybody in Dropbox like on Saturday or maybe yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand why that was shared just now, but okay.
Yeah. I didn't even know during the committee meeting, I didn't know that that's what the presentation was about until like halfway through. And I was like, oh, this is for the property for the whatever. But
For the IDA, yeah, why are they going to the
yeah,
economic?
like, I don't like try to be like high and mighty and fancy, but I could have gotten like a memo about that. I don't know, whatever. No big deal. Moving on. I do want to, yeah, right. We don't have to stand on ceremony all the time. I don't know, should I report out? We made the decision to direct counsel to withdraw a
language
sentence
for the-
from order.
Submit an affirmation amending the order approving the sale of the foundry project.
Right, we did that too. And that's it. We haven't made any other decisions in executive. Okay, so now we can talk about the loan and or grant program. Brief kind of my take on it is we have the option of doing grants or loans. I really don't think we have the capacity to administer loans, and from what I understand, they sort of like turn into grants if they're not repaid anyway. So I think our decision-making point is, do we want to do grants? And if so, in what amounts and how much of our funds would we want to allocate toward that. I personally don't feel strongly either way. I probably lean toward yes, but I'm not like married to it. I'm probably more interested in how Cher feels because she'd be the one dealing with most of it.
Right.
She's also gonna have a baby soon, so I don't want to like overburden her for sure. And I don't think we're gonna have much by the way of active, engaged staff while Cher's out. So I don't know how kind of,
Yeah, I will say that Bob and I were able to talk about it, and I think if the board is interested in pursuing that, the way to go about it would be to create a committee that would basically explore what the grant would be, iron out all the details, and then present it to the board to say if you all agree or not. I don't think I think it's completely plausible. Just so to reiterate, so you all know, again, this is only for PPE. It's not for anything else. So, you know, and looking at what some other IDAs are doing, you know, it's not retroactive all the way back until March. It's about up until June if you're looking at what some other IDAs are doing. So, you know, you all are members of the community. You know, how do you feel about the need for people to purchase PPE to be able to have their businesses function? Who's not functioning because they don't have PPE? You know, and then from that, you know, with this committee that would be created, let's look at the budget and say, how much do you want to allocate to that? We don't really have large corporations where I foresee needing the whole amount, which I think is 10 grand, to implement PPE. I mean, this is really geared toward retail, who would need it, especially in our city and the infrastructure that we have here. So, you know, take that into consideration and think about, you know, is this something you really feel is useful to the business community in Newburgh to be able to function for people that are not functioning right now? You know, I leave that up to you all to think about that.
No, I
I
agree
have a
with your
question.
concerns. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Marlon.
I was gonna ask, for us to actually even establish that committee or make a decision, do we have a timeline? Are we under some sort of like time requirement from state?
So that's a great question. The statute prohibits applications after the declaration of the end of the state disaster emergency.
Yeah.
So the question becomes when is the likelihood of that declaration to occur? You know, we all hope sooner rather than later, but by accounts, it doesn't appear that it's on the immediate horizon. But you would not be able to consider any applications after that declaration that it's ended.
And it's either grants or loans.
The statute allows for grants or loans or both. Many IDAs, well, let me back up. Some IDAs have established a grant program. A smaller number have done a loan program. Those that are doing the loan program or that have elected not to do the loan program have decided not to because of the reporting and audit potential requirements of the ABO.
Yep.
And the fact that there's a fear that the ABO will use, even though the IDA has its best interest, the ABO will use it as an opportunity to admonish the IDA that something was done incorrectly and potentially ask the IDA or the IDA board members to repay the loan proceeds that were inappropriately used. The grant program, I think.
Severe. I mean, even with the ABO being a sort of like notorious watchdog, you have to really mess around with these funds for them to come after the members personally, I hope.
I would agree with that. You know, it's really gross negligence if you just start handing money out to anyone that's happens to be on the street. You know, as long as you have an application and program guidelines and a process to review, I think the ABO will criticize you, but if you did something wrong, but it's unlikely that they'll do the extreme penalty. But because there's less requirements for the grant program, and the grant program, as Cher said, is you know, something that's essentially hard cost, PPE, or fixtures that are preventing the spread of COVID-19. It's a little bit easier to say, okay, they have a purchase order for $5,000 worth of PPE and a fixture
Right.
to prevent the spread, and that's what we're going to reimburse them for.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Mm.
Well,
Well, I think to Marlone's point, we have some time because, I mean, as much as we would all like this to be over, I don't think it is. I agree with you, Cher, that I would love for us to be able to administer grants or loans for things that can really help the city. Not that certain businesses, and Mike Kelly, you may be able to speak to this better than most of us, but I don't know that there are businesses who are closed who would benefit from that, or who would be able to reopen or would be doing more or better business if they had this. Like, I don't know that that's
Yeah.
The
point where we're
only
helping.
thing, Christina, that I can think of is a certain demographic, the majority of our city, that frequents the local bodegas, the local restaurants and stuff like that, that maybe are not so like visibly being under hardship, but they're having to maybe cut corners to stay clean. And some of these people are being very creative though, and doing a great job. But the connection that I make with this is how we can potentially impact the spread of this by giving some sort of grant. That's pretty much the only thing that makes sense in my head right now, as opposed to loans. But we obviously would have to consider how that would go, or if we were going to be willing to do that. But that's the impact that I see us helping in this time. Really, like where we would be impactful. So, I definitely think that we should consider it. I think we do have. I'm glad we do have a little bit of time. Well, given the circumstances, but it's definitely worth a conversation, in my opinion.
yeah, I think that. I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I know that I'm not going to know exactly how some business owner thinks, oh, maybe this could really help me out, you know. So that's why I kind of lean like, you know what, let's have a program. Let's, you know, we can allocate not a ton of money to it, but like enough to be meaningful. Because, you know, some of these businesses, I think it would be meaningful to have, you know, $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever it is, just to like get fully stocked up on sanitizer and masks and maybe like a partition or something like that for the register or whatever it is. Gloves, you know, stuff where I think Marlon makes a good point. Like, they might be cutting corners now and just like getting it done because that's how they built the place to begin with, you know?
Right.
But this is a way to kind of like let them relax a little bit and whatever.
Yeah, and the people that are coming to the establishments, essentially, we're helping them out too.
Yeah.
How much money are we allowed to allocate towards this? What was the $10,000 number? Is that per establishment is our max, or is that per ID? Sorry?
That's per grant. So you
Yeah,
might
the maximum grant amount could be 10 grand. I wouldn't want to go over 5, and I think 5 is even kind of pushing it, but
Yeah.
But I definitely don't think it should be a large. I'm thinking individually, it shouldn't be a large amount, but then maybe we could set a cap for ourselves and say, okay, this is what we're with, and then we can say, or I don't know if that's even within.
That's something we can do, Bob, that we could lessen the amount of what we would be willing to, like this, you know, this the state's saying grants up to 10K. Can we say grants up to, 2,000?
Yeah.
You can make the program anything the board elects to do. The 10,000 is per applicant. It doesn't prevent if they get a grant from you, they in theory the applicant can't go. Statute prohibits them from going to another IDA for a similar grant. But if there's an Orange County IDA program for grants that's a larger amount, they can always go there.
Do we know, does the Orange County IDA have something?
They have a loan program from their bond fund. I don't believe that they've adopted the grant program yet.
And one other question, Bob. For those who would be awarded the grant money, would they have to report that to the IRS and pay taxes on that later on?
Good question.
I'm not a tax expert, but I believe that would be
It's income.
that would be a reportable income on a 1098 G or 9G or something.
I don't know.
You definitely have to report the income, but if you're matching it to expenses, you should be not. It shouldn't be an issue, is my point.
Right.
The only issue that the board needs to, well, among others, there's two issues the board needs to consider other than what you've already discussed. One is how far back you would consider going. Would you go back to the date that the governor signed the legislation, which is June 17th? Or would it be only from the date of approval going forward?
What was the date the legislation was signed again?
June 17th.
17th.
I kind of think.
Can I weigh in as somebody who's like literally dealing with this from a restaurant perspective? I would say if we can operate retroactively, that's how it would be helpful to a business like mine. I know I can tell you I've probably spent $2,000 on PPE type materials in the last month or so. So that's definitely how I would look at it anyway.
Right.
That's what I figured too. Like if we go retroactive, then yeah, some business went and spent a bunch of money on it, and they were proactive and did the right thing, and now they're
Right.
SOL.
Exactly.
Would it be a reimbursement or would it be money up front?
I think
Well,
It's reimbursement, no?
Well, what Bob was going to say, I think, correct me, Bob, is does the board want to retroactively do it to June 17th, or do you want to do it retroactively to March when the state of emergency was put in place? Is that what you were going to say?
I wasn't going there because I don't think there's, I get very uncomfortable going past June 17th. In March, there was no legislation. There was proposed legislation in April. It passed the legislature on June 5th and was signed by the governor on the 17th.
Right. No. Yeah. I don't think we can go past the date of the legislation. So really, the question is, do we do it from point of approval going forward, or date of the legislation? Sounds like people like the idea of date of legislation. I do. Mike does. Anybody else?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
And do we set, I mean, if we set a cap of, right, $1,500 or whatever it is.
Before you ask your question, Marlon asked the question I want to get to, though, whether it would be reimbursement or upfront. And I'm inclined to do both, because I don't want people to have to go out of pocket in order to get this, but I'd like them to come with some evidence, like, here's where we're going to spend it and how we're going to spend it. Like, maybe that's not a purchase order because they haven't bought it already, but like.
Yeah. Okay.
In your guidelines, you would require a submission of at least a PO, or for reimbursement, evidence that they had a PO and actually paid the funds.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's fair. Because
The question I had was, we're setting a cap per applicant, but are we setting a cap of how much funds we are setting aside? I mean, theoretically, every business could apply and we could go through our entire.
You would have to do both. And in establishing the program, you'd have to set how much is available and then how much per each entity application.
Okay.
The one item I wanted to raise and make sure that you're aware of is that there needs to be a determination. There needs to be 3 determinations made for the grant program. One, that the business conducts business in the city of Newburgh, so that should be
Yes.
fairly easy to establish. The second, that they've been negatively impacted. If they were closed at all, obviously they've been negatively impacted. The third is the hardest one that you have to figure out how to achieve, which is that the business was financially viable prior to the emergency.
Okay.
What,
If it was
what does
open prior to the
financially
emergency,
viable
I'd say it was
mean?
close enough to financially viable.
Means no startups. It means that we could look at their bank statements and see if they had enough money to cover.
How long they've been in business?
It's
I think it's as long as you have a rational way to establish financial viability, either through the submission of bank statements, which some entities may not want to do, through the submission of tax returns, which again, some businesses may not want to do, or at least, I think what Marlon said, the fact that they've been in business for a period of time, something greater than 12 months and maybe less than X.
Okay.
Something like that to come up with some demonstrable business judgment rule as to what this board determines to be financially viable.
Do you know what other boards have done?
Time open.
So what other boards? Other boards have the town of Montgomery has reached out to its approved accounting firm, and they've come up with a schedule, a scoring schedule, depending on what type of documents are submitted. And certainly that's public information, so I can circulate that to this IDA as well. Other IDAs are creating internal score sheets, but they also have more staff than you do, so it's easier for them to do that.
But there's some, we have, in order to give out a grant, we have to have some defensibility if for whatever reason we're audited for money that we're giving out.
Exactly.
The board has to have some process to determine financial viability and document that process was followed.
Okay.
All 3 points,
What
right?
if can we simplify the request for documentation by making this grant reimbursable so that money's already been expended? Does that
You still have to knock off the 3 points. They still have to meet the 3 bullets.
Yeah, I'm just thinking outside of my own business, but the businesses that could actually benefit the most from this locally probably don't have that ready information that they can just hit enter and send off, making it more difficult, making the likelihood that they'll apply less.
But they're gonna have it's gonna be reimbursable or proactively. You can either submit like a PO to show that you are going to order this stuff, and then we can give you the money for it. Or if you've already expended the money, show that you've expended the money. You can do it either way, if you ask me.
And this is a grant, Mike. This isn't a loan, so they don't have to repay it.
No, I understand. I understand that. My concern is that the viability question, especially if you want to talk about bodegas and local stores and things like that. I mean, I know how this business works, and I know that some people, that information is not going to benefit them. And I just wonder
think we need to ask
how we can reconcile that.
I don't think we need to ask for bank statements. I think that's invasive. I don't think we should do that. I think it's a length of time in business. If it's over a year, then you're financially viable.
That's one of the points. What were the other 2? I'm sorry.
What is defensible? I mean, I'm just concerned about us being covered as well. I mean, what are essentially the least amount of requirements that are still defensible, Bob?
If the ABO wants to come down, confident.
Okay.
We're
I just think, I think if we're under a certain dollar amount and the requirements are time in business, that I think will be, and in my opinion, I don't think there's going to be like this jump to come audit every single decision.
So the ABO certainly has the right to audit every single decision, obviously. The key is to have a process in place that's fair and reasonable. And arguably defensible. I think if you say that a business has to be in business for at least 12 months, that's defensible. If you say the business has to be established and in business in the city of Newburgh for at least 24 months, that's a little bit better by way of defensible.
Right.
If you say 36 months, now you're knocking probably out a fair amount of businesses, but it's certainly defensible if they've been in business for 3 years. So I think you just need to develop a scale or a process to determine that financial viability. And there is no definition in the statute of what it is. So it's a business judgment rule established by the IDA, and you can certainly in your resolution state or in your program guidelines state that financial viability is determined by the city of Newburgh IDA to be a business that has been in business for at least X months.
Well, is it possible to say something like a business, these are the requirements, you have to be a City of Newburgh business for 3 years. If you've been a business for less than 3 years, then we require another piece of information. Or
I think that
if you've
I
only
think that's
been
entirely
Sure.
that's entirely defensible. That's
Yes.
the way to do it. Yes.
And you set yourself up to get this information by asking for it in the application. So I mean, you know, once you all set these guidelines and these metrics, then you just put it in the application, and then, you know, everything that we get, they'll have to dig for it if they want, you know, to hit this button at the end. So,
Yeah.
so, you know, that's why I'm in line with Bob's advice of setting up a subcommittee just for this purpose, where we iron this out and then submit it to the entire board. Unfortunately, Adam's not here and Sarah's not here. But how do you all feel about doing that?
I'm in favor of it.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anybody have an idea about how, what our maximum total funds would be?
Again, that was something I was hoping.
I would. I'm gonna lean on the people that have been here the longest, because I know that to amount the bit that we have, there's been a lot of work that's been done, and I don't know. I feel like maybe they're in better position to give us an idea.
Well, let me just say this also. You can apply for $100, and then if you needed more, you're allowed to come back and say, hey, can I have 500 more? Like, correct, Bob?
Okay, so what we're talking about right now is the total amount that we as an agency want to allocate.
Right.
Oh,
Right. Right.
So again, that if the subcommittee can come up with a number, present it, you know, those are like big questions that can be ironed out.
I
agree.
As a treasurer, I'm gonna make a suggestion.
And I'm happy to make myself available. I'm happy to make myself available to any meeting of the subcommittee to help out.
Okay, Marlon, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, as a treasurer, I'm going to put some thought into it too, but I'm going to maybe call you, Austin, and Nancy, since you've been here for a little longer, just to get some input. But I don't have a clear number in my mind. If anybody does, I'm open to suggestions, but I mean, I'm willing to put some thought into that and bring it forward to you guys.
I think that's something that the subcommittee can work on along with these other issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to determine and bring before the board.
So let's get volunteers for the subcommittee.
I'll volunteer.
I'll submit.
I was hoping, Marlon, you would volunteer. Good. And did you say too, Mike?
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah.
Good, because those are the most important ones, not to diss anybody else, but like kind of felt like the treasurer and the restaurateur here should be in the mix, you know.
And we're gonna have the application in Spanish too, by the way.
Yeah, not, you know.
Hope you like
Imagine.
So why don't we just have it be you guys for now? And it helps too because you're not really a quorum either, so. Or two board members talking isn't subject to open meetings law, so we don't have to worry about that either. And then guys come up with something, And this is the kind of thing where, like, if we got to do another quick special meeting over the next few weeks, just for on this one thing, just say, okay, we've looked at what Marlon and Mike have come up with, and we like it, or we want to tweak it a little bit, and then we can actually do it and announce it. So it's not, we're not waiting until like the end of September for that.
Right, exactly.
And I've already
Okay.
drafted up what the grant application could look like. So a lot of questions are raised on my behalf. Basically, it's just coming to you guys to like answer those questions on what you would want to present to the rest of the board.
Well,
So-
sure, I think you should probably be involved in Mike and Marlon's discussions too. Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really the three of you, I
Yeah.
think. All right.
So do we do
Great.
a voice motion for that and just, you know, and also clarify that this is a temporary committee and that once the program is over, that the committee will no longer exist? Is that the way to go about it, Bob?
Yes.
I mean, we have to formalize it like that, or do we want to do that so we can put it in a press release or what?
I would not do a press release until you actually have a program.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'll start getting applications tomorrow.
But the formality is what Austin's mentioning of.
Does it require a formality or?
I don't think forming a subcommittee with two board members requires a formal resolution.
Right. Okay. Good.
You've already decided in this meeting that Marlon and Mike are going to be on committee. You work with Cher. I'll be available as necessary, and then there'll be a report back to the full board.
Great. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are in good shape. Thank you all for meeting, and
Need a motion?
take a motion to dismiss. Motion to, adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Nancy. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. Thank you, Mike. All in favor, say aye, or just log
Aye.
off. Whatever.
Aye.
All right. Have a good evening, guys.